Hi everybody and welcome back to B2B NAV. This week you've just got the two of us, me and Ollie, and we're going to be discussing social media and whether there is a need or not to be present on every single channel or platform, I guess. So I could have phrased that as delivering an omni-channel experience for your customers, but buzzwords aside, we see it a lot with our clients. We were saying just before things kicked in now of like which platforms they should be on, or maybe frantically chasing to be on every platform. So they want to be on LinkedIn, they want to be on Facebook, they want to be on Twitter, Instagram's even emerging now, YouTube, so you know they're all out there.
You've missed TikTok.
TikTok, I don't profess to understand TikTok yet, so I'm sorry, I'm getting too old for that one. I also missed out Snapchat because I don't get that one either. But what I mean is, should we start there in terms of that omni-channel experience that everybody's talking about, that buzzword at the minute of delivering value to your customers at each touch point where you can be found? Does that mean every channel?
No, I think it means using some channels that make sense for you correctly so that they are in tune with everything else that you're doing. So like you say, if people are finding you across multiple different touch points, be that your website, offline or social media, that they're getting a consistent experience, it doesn't mean you have to be everywhere. I think one of the things that we see, and I'm sure we can delve more into this, is that the more you try and do, the worse that you do. Unless you've actually got the genuine resources to be able to do it correctly, you're probably making a mistake trying to be everywhere at once.
Spreading yourself too thin, in effect. So I guess from a client's perspective, a lot of the things they do, obviously, when we're working on briefs, doing some research into a new business opportunity or for our existing clients, we will look at the social media footprint of them and quite often their competition. Maybe somebody they aspire or want to be like as well. But is that even a good starting point these days? Or because I think for a lot of them, they go, oh, okay, our competitors on LinkedIn and they've got 1,000 followers, and on Twitter and they've got 500. We need to chase that.
Well,
it feels like the wrong starting point for me a lot of the time.
I think it's good to know that, but that doesn't mean you need to do it, if that makes sense. So just because somebody else has managed to get a following or has started a channel somewhere else doesn't mean you should necessarily be there. I think kind of as with everything, and I think we echo this point all the time, it's start trying to understand what you're trying to achieve before you start doing anything. And if you are already all over social, I think is often the case that, you know, over time somebody's created all these channels at various points. Kind of take a pause and consider, do you really need them or not? Again, weigh in what your objectives are, what you're trying to achieve, what the purpose of each channel is, who do you believe you're reaching on each channel.
And do you think many clients do that as an exercise, or do you think they are just chasing
I think a lot of the time,
social media logos, really?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of the time that's the case. I think you'll find, or we find, that we do have clients that have at least thought about which channels they should be on. So being a B2B agency, Facebook doesn't come up as often, whereas I think nearly every company that we work with has a LinkedIn profile, and most will have a Twitter profile. So somebody at some point have thought, which channels should we be on? But it doesn't mean that they've necessarily gone that extra step and really thought about who their audience is, what should they be communicating, should they be, communicating this kind of content, that kind of content, and so on.
And do you think it's important if a prospective, I guess, client, customer, or employee even goes on Facebook and your company has no profile on Facebook? Do you think that does detract from the value of the brand, or do you think that's okay as long as it's been considered and maybe articulated somewhere?
I think it's absolutely fine as long as it's been considered and there's a reason for it. Like you mentioned Facebook as an example there. If you're not all over Facebook, but you've got a great LinkedIn profile that's LinkedIn, bad choice of word there, but you've got a great LinkedIn profile that ties together with everything else that you're doing, then that's your voice, that's your social voice. If you don't have a place on Facebook, nobody's going to look and see you don't have that Facebook channel, therefore you're not a great brand.
But I think it's come to light for me recently, even here with our own our marketing. We truly believe we should be leading from the front, and sometimes that's not the case because you're evolving as quickly as your clients are. And I think looking at our own social media profile here at BDB, we launched Instagram and YouTube most recently, and we put more effort with Instagram. But I feel like in the last couple of years, I've really looked at what the purpose behind our own social media is. So Instagram very much for us is about behind the scenes of BDB, kind of lifting the curtain on what goes on behind the scenes. So whether that's team events, celebrations, bringing our office to life for clients, because quite a lot of our clients are international and maybe haven't even been to the office sometimes. Bringing team members to life, and also the processes of how we work and how we work together and interact. So people can sort of visualise us, I guess, even if they're doing work with us. So that's got a clear purpose for me. And that maybe is a slightly different tone of voice, slightly different, more playful character potentially than what we do on LinkedIn, being more corporate led.
Well, I think that's the thing, is understanding what each channel can be used for and should be used for, and who's likely to find you there.
And do you think in B2B that's generic across most businesses, or do you think is LinkedIn the one where you put your corporate pieces and your more relevant thought leadership content, and is Instagram more play, fun, behind the scenes? Is it that simple?
That can apply in a lot of situations. It depends on your type of B2B company you are, because you've obviously got some B2B companies that are actually much closer to B2C in terms of their offering. So their audience, for example, isn't large enterprise corporations that they'd love to sell into, but their audience might be plumbers and things like that. That's still a business, but at that scale, what they're doing is actually much closer to B2C than the kind of B2B marketing that we are typically kind of working in, I'd say. So at that point, platforms like Facebook go right back up there as being a prime place to be able to reach what is effectively a mass audience again. Whereas when you're trying to reach, in our case, as is often the case, kind of the key B2B decision makers, then the options just aren't there really to find them on Facebook, and it's not often the platform where people are looking to engage with you as much.
Okay, because I think we talked about purpose and kind of objectives earlier, in the sense of starting point being why are you on this platform, what's the purpose of it, and a lot of people you speak about reach a lot of the time. I think you hear that word a lot being referenced, but in our world, in my personal world here at BDB, again, reach is important, but I view more our social media profile as a further kind of shop window, like the website, almost in a way, right or wrong, this is my personal opinion, of if people do want to look for us on LinkedIn, do we look credible, do we look authentic, do we look like we know our stuff in the B2B arena with the types of content and posts and interactions that we've got, and when somebody goes on Instagram, do we look like someone that like to work with and be part of that team. That isn't about reach necessarily of followers, or because I think we hear it an awful lot with clients that they're very proud that their LinkedIn audience has gone up by 1,000 followers. They know nothing about the demographic of who's followed them. They don't know anything, no breakdown of the numbers. And you can fall foul of that in your own business here of, our LinkedIn audience has gone up by X. Okay, has that resulted in anything? Has there been any impact on that? Has it meant we've had a new business inquiry? That's different. But the likelihood is it's probably not. So should followers be an objective? Or
I suppose there are advantages at times to having followers, assuming they're the right followers. But I think you and I probably share the same belief here, which is that it would be better to be putting out the right content and have a purpose behind that content than it would be to have loads and loads of likes and follows to it. Because especially in that B2B space, the one right person finding that content can mean that you do win business, or you do help to push somebody over to getting in touch with you that might not have done otherwise. And you can't really track that, because that might just be one of the many touch points on their journey. I suppose it's about giving that the correct public image, and kind of making sure that you're living and breathing your ethos, your methodology, your work, and sharing that, so that if somebody does see that, then it's like you say, another shop window, and it's just helping position them in your mind. So I see it very much as brand positioning. So for sure, having lots of followers that are made up of the right audience is great, because they can help amplify that message. And you can build, I guess, engagement around that and community around that. But I don't know if it should be the main thing you're aiming for.
That's a good point, though, because it depends on how much engagement you're getting, doesn't it? Because I think that's the one thing that seems to get lost at the minute, in the sense of when we're working with clients, and again looking at our own house here, is there genuine engagement? Different than a like. So we will put something up and 4 or 5 team members will like it, and it looks like we've 5 likes, that's cool. But that's not our purpose. We're not chasing likes and we're not chasing followers. But in the sense of, I think for other clients and prospects potentially, they are sometimes, and genuine engagement and creating that community and that conversation where you are reactively responding to people, you're interacting with people. You don't see a great deal of it in B2B yet.
Even some of the really large companies that we've worked with and interacted with who have a large following don't necessarily get good engagement. So having 50,000 LinkedIn followers for your company account is not the same as getting engagement and following. Because that comes, particularly if you're a recognized name like some of our clients are, you will automatically get people that follow you because you're a big name in that industry, you're a big name globally, and you just naturally attract some followers for that. if you want engagement, you need to be putting out engaging content. And I think it's the same as we see with the likes of blogs and things like that. It's very easy to put out content. It's not as easy to put out good content that people actually care about.
Yeah, and I think that, again, that ties back for me to what I would consider is the omni-channel experience. So when you talk about customer centricity and wanting to put your customer first and deliver that exceptional experience where they can find you, I think sometimes the scattergun approach to social media flies completely in the face of that.
Yeah.
Because you do a half-hearted job. I was trying to think of the right way to phrase that. A half-hearted job across all platforms, inconsistent level of posts, inconsistent level of content hitting them, scattergun too thin across various platforms. And the thing to bear in mind, I think, for a client, a prospect, or anybody listening, is it takes time. It's a real investment to build your social media presence and profile, unless you're very clear on your objectives of what you're trying to achieve with it, because it's so easy to fall foul of a couple of ad hoc posts every now and again going out, and I think that looks, for me personally, that looks twice as bad as not being on the platform when you see they've not posted since 2008.
Yeah, I would say that it's definitely, if you're not going to keep a channel active, don't start it, or if you already started it, shut it down. Because like you say, I'd rather go and search on Twitter and find out company X doesn't have a profile than find out that they've not posted in 8 years, because that looks like they're a dead company or something.
It's like you've lost interest in it, doesn't it? That's what I mean, and that's certainly not the impression you're trying to create for a new prospect, that you start something and you can't finish it. It probably doesn't set the right tone.
And I guess the other aspect here is making sure that you're posting the right sort of content if you're going to start doing it, because it's very easy to, I guess, have that ad hoc approach of just kind of making it up as you go along and trying to fill posts almost like you just know that you need to get a post out, so you're posting whatever you can, and you end up with content that's like just sharing other posts without adding your own commentary to it. So here's a new report that's in the industry, and just literally like retweeting it on Twitter, for example. Or sharing your company news, which is, depending on your company news, not necessarily of interest to anybody else. Sometimes it's quite internal news. So I was looking at a profile the other day, and one of the announcements on this profile was that they're making great strides with their sales pipeline, which, assuming their audience is their customers, people probably don't care that much about. I mean, if they're trying to attract investors, that might be great, but otherwise it's probably off-putting, because it's not in any way of interest to customers seeing that.
And how important these days is breaking the social media algorithms? So you'll do all sorts. If if anybody watches a Gary V or a Steve Bartlett in the UK, where they're posting copious amounts of content with six teams of 6 or 10 members deep behind them, producing content, 5-10 posts a day, and you go through your feed if you follow them. I don't know if you do, but in the sense of that it's littered with posts of relevance and completely irrelevant, I would say at times. Relationship advice through to building a business, through to collecting football cards, you name it, with Gary V, it's on there. But he is a big advocate of just more content, feed the content machine. And I know a while back LinkedIn kind of favoured that in terms of more posts, but now from what I'm being told, you shouldn't be doing that anymore. It's more one post a week, a day. I'm looking at people around me. One post a day. People were in the same meeting that I was in the other week. So is that a thing? Should it even be a consideration, trying to work the algorithms, or do you think it's more about the purpose and delivery?
I think what we'll see, as we saw with SEO in the past, is that at the times there's always ways to game the system, but I don't know if it necessarily pays off in the long run.
Right,
so
okay.
I personally always believe is just focus on what's right for your users. So if they are engaging with your content and want that regular content from you, then by all means do it, because that's helping you in the long run. On the other hand, if you're doing it for the sake of having content and it's not really relevant to you or your purpose or what people are interested in, then you're just, I guess, adding to the noise, which is going to result in low engagement and and then kind of low interaction going forward.
I guess the important thing there again is there's nothing also wrong with having a change in direction and trying things on social media. I think some people get locked into, we will post this type of post once per week for the rest of the year, and then if it has no engagement or nothing's happening with it, and we test things like this here at BDB, and we'll look at it and go, that's no engagement at all, don't do any more of them, it's serving no purpose whatsoever.
Well, it's a digital platform, and as is the case with most digital platforms, you've got the ability to quickly try and change things and adapt, and continuing to do something that doesn't work is just kind of idiocy, for lack of a better word.
I think it's adapting and evolving it, and if you're going to quit with purpose again. So quit for the right reasons, because you decide that channel's not right for you.
You should never quit just because anything seems hard or it doesn't seem to be initially working, it's working out, is there a way to do something better? So I'm quite a big advocate in general of if something can't work, is that because it doesn't work, or can we find a way to make it work? So at least at first, with anything you're trying, try to make it work. Even if you don't think it will, even if you've got a bit of a negative mindset, put the effort in to try and make it work first. And if you genuinely don't believe it will work and you've tested it, maybe then it's time to pack it in and pivot, do something else.
Yeah.
But put that genuine effort in to try it, because different things resonate.
Because again, that's one of the conclusions we've reached recently in the sense of BDB's Twitter account. So it's been going for years. I mean, I think 15 years. I'm making numbers up here. I'm sure people can check it if they want to. And that was probably primarily set up because one of the guys that used to work here loved Twitter, and that was his kind of thing. That was his platform. But for me, Twitter is very much about engagement, conversation, joining conversations, participating in conversations, and we've personally never used it for that kind of basis, unless maybe we were attending an event or an exhibition of some kind, and even then it certainly isn't practicing what we preach in terms of leading the way and delivering a 360 experience. It's very much, we're at an event, here we are. So we've decided to end our Twitter account.
Well, the best Twitter accounts that I've seen and that I've personally followed are people that are doing that kind of thing. It's a group of experts. They're posting, they're commenting back to each other, they're sharing advice, they're getting input, and you can build relationships that way. That can add further value in the future, whether that's because they share your content or because you just can ask somebody for advice and things like that. But if you're just doing that one-way communication of sharing updates from time to time, you're probably not going to get much engagement, because there's hundreds of other channels doing that exact same thing. Exactly. It's the conversations that are more engaging. I think you hit a great point on the head there with the fact that somebody worked here that did enjoy doing that. And that's a big thing about social, is the people that are doing best on social are probably people that really like doing social. Yeah. So I don't particularly like doing social. I don't mind posting the odd thing now and again, but I'm not somebody that likes to go and share with the world everything I'm doing. But you see, there are people out there that do that, or they have people doing that on their behalf. And they're some of the great profiles where you've got, the likes of CEOs and things like that, sharing everything that's going on in their company, sharing the pitfalls, sharing the trials and tribulations that they go through. And they're great accounts to follow, but it needs somebody that's, I guess, passionate about doing that to actually keep those running. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just going to be one of the ones where you start it, best intentions, you do it for a couple of weeks.
It just comes back to purpose again, though, in the sense of if it has a clear purpose, then you'll dedicate the time to it. Whereas for me, where I fail to do that, particularly my own social media profile, because I don't really place that much relevance on it. I probably do a little bit more on Instagram, which probably goes against every piece of advice somebody would tell you, because I post business stuff and personal stuff. But for me, it's more about showing who I am as an individual, I guess, and my personal brand, if you could even call it that, but in the sense of who I am inside and outside of work. Okay, so I guess in terms of I'm just thinking in terms of, because social media also obviously had a lot of attention recently in terms of the negative press around it, but from a customer centricity point of view, it also gives you the ability to quickly interact with customers or in relation to customer service, complaints, you name it. And we don't see it quite as much in B2B, again, do we, compared to B2C. But the fact on Twitter you can Uber, whoever you're interacting with, and probably if they've got their customer services set up correctly, will get back to you quite quickly. Yeah.
Well, I've had mixed experiences there.
Well, no, I know. I was thinking that, as I say, but very mixed experiences. But that's when you start calling people out and ranting it on Twitter, and you see those kind of posts.
It didn't get me my Papa John's pizza any faster.
It's because you ordered a Papa John's. But in the sense of, do you think that's an issue if you're not on the likes of Twitter then, that there's not that forum where people can quickly get hooked? Because LinkedIn isn't really like that. Instagram, I don't think is really like that.
For a B2B brand, I wouldn't say so. I don't think that's going to be your method of customer service or customer support 9 times out of 10. Yeah. For a B2C brand, I do think you should be there because there is that expectation that you can do that. Yeah. So in those situations where I've tried to use it and been let down, it's not always been let down. Sometimes it works fine. Yeah. It's just really disappointing and leaves you feeling kind of more annoyed at the company for the lack of response. But I think, again, from my experience with B2B, I've not seen that need for that to exist. We've usually got things like dedicated account managers and numbers that you can call. Yeah. I think it's a bit different in B2C because the corporation is normally a bit more faceless to you. You might know the brand and you might have an affinity with the brand, but you don't normally have a contact you can talk to at that company. Yeah.
So a couple of last points to touch on before we wrap up today. One of them was in relation to social media guidelines, and I don't mean like contractual ones here that you put in the back of an employment contract that say you shouldn't post on behalf of the company and that kind of thing. but we've seen it becoming more and more prevalent as the social channels are becoming more prevalent and more active across our clients. Where do you stand on the brand guidelines, but social media brand guidelines point? Because a lot of clients are requesting them these days and want them writing to get more consistency, but is it overkill or is it killing freedom?
I think there's 2 points I'll pick up on here. First of all is the point that you clarified that you weren't talking about at the moment, which is the terms in the back of your contract which say don't post on social. I think that's 100% the wrong way to go, because your employees can be and should be somebody that can help advocate on your behalf.
Yep.
And if you're not enabling them to do that, or there's something wrong that causes them to want to either not do that, or even worse, go the negative route and start slagging off the company online, then that's probably something you should be addressing. But I think in general they can be something you mobilise. In terms of the guidelines themselves, like you say, we are seeing more clients interested in that, and I think there's good reason for it, which is that consistency can be hard. I think one thing I'd say is they shouldn't be too prescriptive, because I think part of social media is about having that personality come across. But I think particularly when you're talking about multi-regions, multi-teams, lots of different networks that are potentially not managed by the same people, having some kind of rule book in play can really help. One, the consistency, tone of voice, consistency of imagery, that kind of thing, can help speed things up, because it means you know what to do, what the process is. If somebody does message you with a complaint or a customer service request or a sales inquiry, you already have a process in mind. You probably have some template messages to go back with in terms of, we'll handle this, or can you please contact these people, or
managing expectations, we'll back to you within a certain time frame or whatever.
Instead of, if you don't have that in place and somebody sends you a complaint, I think the first thing you'll probably do is start to panic and start running around asking different team members if you've got anything you should be doing, and so on.
Linked to that then, because that was the follow-up question, was very much linked to that, in the sense of, again, I think we touched on it in one of the previous podcasts, but obviously the social media footprint of a company these days, you have a corporate account, you may have some key stakeholders, maybe a CEO, I don't know, a marketing officer, whatever it may be, alongside then, hypothetically speaking, 40 territorial locations globally. And I know the answer, but in the sense of, is there any recommendations or blueprint here in terms of whether a certain division in coatings and construction should have their own social media handle versus the corporate? And then under coatings and construction, let's just say you've got 3 different divisions. You've got adhesives, you've got inks, you've got concrete as an example, whatever it may be. Do they have their own social media handle? And you can keep going on this and end up with 50, 60 different social media profiles that arguably all post the same thing, or all post sporadically different things.
I think this is where you really need to have a good think about who you're trying to reach, what you want to share, what you actually have the resources to share versus what you'd like to share, and making sure that you don't kind of run headfirst into setting up all these different accounts that you have no way to support. So, for example, we could potentially set up an account for all of our different individual internal departments, so a digital account and a PR account, and we'll share related news, so a customer could follow that digital account if they wanted digital news from me and the team, for example.
Sure.
But do we have the manpower to make sure that we're posting 6-7 streams of content on a regular basis? Probably not.
Again, detracting from that customer-centric experience, isn't it?
So you'll end up with some of those accounts lagging back. You'll end up with some content going on multiple channels. So rather than kind of bite off more than we can chew, it's better for us to work on that from a main account, especially because in our case, that all of those fall under the subject of marketing. So any of our followers will still benefit from seeing content about digital, seeing content about PR. I think one of the points you made there is that you could have drastically different divisions. So one of our new clients that we're working with at the moment, I think they were posting kind of pharma content at the same time as posting food content to the same channel. So those are quite different audiences there. So if you're following that account and the pharma team's much more active and they're posting lots of pharma content, you're just going to be annoyed if you're somebody that works in the food industry. You're going to either unsubscribe or unfollow it because you don't want to see that anymore. So I think it's down to understanding what you're going to be posting, how often you're going to be posting it, and what you actually have the resources to keep up. I'd say some level of diversification and having separate channels is great, but don't go so far that you can't manage it.
Great. Okay. I thought it was really interesting. That was a good episode. So hopefully everybody listening and watching feels the same. Hopefully they find it useful for their ongoing, I guess, social media journey, which I think is a consideration for most businesses these days. thanks very much for listening. And a little plug for our B2B knowledge. So check out b2bknowledge.com, our online ungated content hub, helping prospects, contacts and clients navigate the ever-evolving B2B marketing landscape. I can almost say that now without thinking about it.
That's the one.
Thanks very much and speak to you next week. Cheers, guys.
Thanks.